The sun rose over the prison camp, but its light offered no warmth. The Japanese women had been taken from their homes, their lives upended in a swirl of fear, uncertainty, and confusion. They walked silently through the barracks, their eyes darting nervously at every soldier, every shadow. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of captivity pressing down on them in ways words could not capture. Orders were stripped. Every movement was monitored, every glance scrutinized. They had been through roll calls, inspections, and forced labor, but nothing had prepared them for what was about to come. Whispers circulated among the women, rumors of new rules, stricter measures, and punishments for the slightest disobedience floated through the camp like a thick fog. Then the command came. It was blunt, shocking, and incomprehensible. Prepare yourselves. The words spread through the barracks like fire. Questions burned in every mind. Prepare for what? No one knew. The soldiers remained impassive, leaving only fear to fill the space where understanding should have been. The women gathered in small groups, trembling, trying to find courage in each other's presence. Some clutched at each other's hands, others bowed their heads silently, as if hiding from the inevitable. Nobody spoke, but the tension was palpable. When they were called forward, the first few women hesitated. Their hearts pounded in their chests, and every instinct screamed at them to run, to hide, to resist. But resistance meant punishment, and there was no escape. The barracks fell silent, except for the soft shuffle of feet and the occasional stifled gasp. The order was clear. They were to undress. No explanation, no warning. Just a command that seemed to strip away more than clothes. It stripped away dignity, privacy, and the fragile sense of control they still clung to. Fear surged. Some women froze, unable to process what was being asked. Others wept quietly, tears falling onto the floor. The sound of heavy boots approaching filled the room, echoing against the bare walls, magnifying the terror in their hearts. One woman, barely more than a girl, stepped forward reluctantly. Her hands shook as she reached for the first piece of clothing. Others watched, some turning away, some closing their eyes, waiting for the inevitable humiliation that seemed to hang in the air like a storm cloud ready to break. The soldiers did not speak, but their presence alone was enough. Every movement was observed, every glance noted. It was not just an order, it was a test of obedience, of fear, of endurance. As more women were called, a strange silence fell over the room. The usual murmurs of conversation, the shared whispers of hope or defiance, were gone. Only the sound of the soldiers' boots, the soft rustle of clothing, and the rapid beating of anxious hearts remained. Some women tried to maintain composure, focusing on small acts of resistance, closing eyes, holding hands over their bodies, turning away to preserve a sliver of privacy. But the command allowed no space for such defiance. Every act of hesitation was met with a sharp glance or a gesture from the soldiers, reinforcing that compliance was not optional. One of the older women, a figure of quiet strength among the prisoners, whispered encouragement to the younger ones. Her voice was steady, even as her hands trembled. "Stay strong. This is not who you are. You are still ourselves inside." Her words carried a strange power, a reminder that even when every external control was taken from them, the essence of self remained untouchable. Time stretched unnaturally. Minutes felt like hours as each woman faced the impossible. Some stumbled through the motions mechanically, numbed by shock. Others clung to memories of family, of home, of a world that existed before the camp. These memories became shields, small pockets of resistance against the invasive power of the order. When the last of the women had been called, the room was heavy with tension, but also with a subtle shared understanding. They had endured. Each woman, in her own way, had survived the first confrontation with the unimaginable. Their spirits, though battered, were not broken. Outside the barracks, life continued in its grim routine. Guards moved with precise steps, issuing commands and observing the prisoners. The women returned to their quarters, silent, processing what had happened. Some sat together, sharing whispered reassurances. Others remained alone, staring into the shadows, contemplating the fragility of control and the strength required to maintain inner dignity. The psychological impact of the order lingered. Even those who had complied felt a strange mixture of relief and humiliation. They had obeyed, yes, but in doing so they had also asserted something profound: the ability to endure, to survive, and to maintain their humanity under conditions designed to strip it away. Rumors of what had happened spread through the camp. Whispers of disbelief, shock, and quiet admiration moved from group to group. Even the guards noticed a subtle change in demeanor. The women, though outwardly compliant, carried a new air of resilience, a silent declaration that the core of their identity remained intact. At night, the camp was quiet, but the minds of the prisoners were not. Thoughts of the day's events circled endlessly, intertwining with memories of home, hopes for survival, and the unshakable awareness that their strength had been tested in ways few could imagine. Some wrote in secret, scribbling messages to loved ones or recording memories for themselves. Others found solace in whispered conversations, sharing feelings that could not be expressed openly. Each act, small as it might seem, was a reaffirmation of their inner strength. The following days brought more orders, more challenges, but the women carried with them the knowledge that they had survived one of the most humiliating and frightening commands they would face. It was a lesson in endurance, in solidarity, and in the quiet power of human resilience. By the end of Part 1, the women understood that obedience did not equal submission. Compliance under duress was a strategy for survival, but it did not diminish their sense of self. Each glance shared, each whispered word, each silent act of resistance reinforced the invisible bond that held them together, a bond stronger than fear itself. Even as the camp carried on, routine and discipline masking the chaos beneath, the women retained a sense of inner autonomy. They knew that the orders, no matter how shocking, could never truly take from them what was within: their courage, their dignity, and their unyielding will to survive.
The following morning, the sun rose over the POW camp, but there was no warmth in its light. The women moved silently, heads bowed, hearts heavy from the previous day's ordeal. Whispers circulated, but fear kept them cautious. The memory of the shocking order, the one that demanded they undress, still lingered in every mind. The guards' faces were unreadable, their presence commanding obedience without words. One wrong glance, one hesitation, and punishment would follow. The women walked in rows, the wooden barracks creaking beneath their feet. Every movement was scrutinized, every breath measured. Suddenly a new command rang out: "Line up outside." The words sent shivers down their spines. The barracks emptied in tense silence. The women formed a line, their bodies stiff, eyes wary, trying to anticipate what the next order might demand. No explanation was offered. Their hearts pounded in unison. They could hear the distant clatter of boots, the metallic clang of gates opening. The air smelled faintly of smoke, dust, and the ever-present hint of fear. When they reached the courtyard, the guards gestured toward a central area. There, other prisoners were already gathered, faces pale, eyes wide with apprehension. The women understood immediately. Another test was underway. The prisoners had learned the cruel rhythm of commands, yet the unknown of what was next made anticipation unbearable. A senior guard stepped forward, his voice sharp and devoid of emotion. "Prepare yourselves. Follow instructions precisely. Any deviation will be punished." The weight of the words pressed down like invisible chains. The women glanced at each other. Some grasped the hands of their neighbors. Others closed their eyes in silent prayer. It was clear defiance was impossible, yet compliance did not erase fear. Each woman braced herself for what was to come, drawing strength from the collective resilience of the group. As the first group was called forward, the atmosphere thickened with tension. The soldiers moved with precision, observing every twitch, every hesitation. One woman faltered, her knees trembling, but a sharp gesture from a guard forced her to continue. Her steps were slow, deliberate, each one echoing in the silent courtyard. Behind her, whispers circulated. "Stay strong. Just follow. Survive." The words were barely audible, but they carried immense weight. They were reminders that survival required endurance, that courage was measured not by confrontation, but by the ability to endure the unimaginable. The order repeated itself in variations. Women were instructed to remove items of clothing, then to stand, then to kneel, all under the unwavering gaze of the guards. Each action tested their composure, each movement an exercise in silent defiance. Despite the fear, some women found small ways to resist internally. They maintained eye contact with one another, whispered reassurances, or focused on steadily breathing to calm their racing hearts. Though outwardly obedient, these tiny acts preserved their inner dignity. The guards' methods were calculated. They sought to dehumanize, to break spirits through repeated, degrading commands. Yet the women adapted. Each command became a mental exercise, a test not of compliance, but of endurance. They learned to separate the body from the mind, allowing survival to coexist with inner autonomy. Hours passed in this relentless cycle. The sun rose high and beat down on the courtyard, yet no one faltered visibly. Fatigue threatened to sap their strength, but they drew on reserves of resilience built over days, weeks, and months of captivity. During a brief pause, some women whispered about home. Memories of family, friends, and freedom became shields against despair. Even under scrutiny, these mental refuges allowed them to survive the psychological torment. Then came a new element, inspection. Guards moved among the prisoners, examining compliance, noting hesitation, ensuring every individual followed precisely. The women understood the stakes. A single mistake could mean punishment for themselves or others. Yet within this environment, solidarity emerged. Older women guided the younger ones, offering subtle cues and quiet encouragement. A hand on a shoulder, a nod, a brief whispered word. These acts of camaraderie became lifelines. They reinforced the idea that even in captivity, unity could preserve dignity. At one point, a soldier demanded something unexpected, a personal item to be surrendered. Shock rippled through the line. The women hesitated, some resisting internally, some obeying mechanically. The act was minor, yet symbolically powerful. Each surrender represented the delicate balance between compliance and personal autonomy. When the task was complete, the courtyard seemed emptier, but the mental toll was profound. Women huddled in small clusters, processing the ordeal. Tears were shed silently. Whispers of encouragement passed like wind through the group. Night fell, bringing temporary relief. The women returned to their quarters, exhausted yet steadfast. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by the day's events and anxiety over what to come. Dreams were interrupted by imagined orders, echoes of boots, and shadows of authority figures. The following day, the pattern continued, but something shifted. The women had survived the previous ordeals, and though fear remained, a subtle confidence emerged. They had endured, adapted, and preserved their inner selves despite the soldiers' attempts to humiliate. Subtle acts of resistance grew bolder. Women whispered with less fear, shared stolen smiles, and found ways to maintain personal rituals that reaffirmed their identities. Compliance did not equal submission. It became a strategy, a way to survive while maintaining mental autonomy. The guards, oblivious to this internal defiance, continued issuing orders. Each command was met with outward obedience but internal resilience. The women learned to navigate the psychological battlefield, recognizing that their greatest power lay in what could not be taken: courage, memory, and the unbreakable bond between prisoners. By the end of Part 2, the women had endured a sequence of unthinkable orders. Each act of compliance was a triumph over fear, each whispered word a declaration of resilience. They understood that while their bodies were constrained, their minds remained free, their identities intact, and their unity stronger than ever. As the night deepened, a quiet determination settled over the camp. The women had faced the unimaginable, survived the shocks of command, and discovered the quiet strength within themselves. They were no longer just victims. They were survivors, bonded by shared trials and fortified by the knowledge that human dignity can endure even under relentless oppression. The second part of the story ends with resolve. The women's spirits had been tested, stretched, and ultimately strengthened. They had learned to navigate fear, to find solidarity, and to preserve the core of who they were. What lay ahead would be another challenge, but they faced it with the resilience forged in adversity, prepared to confront whatever the next unthinkable order might bring.
The dawn arrived quietly over the POW camp, but peace had no place here. The Japanese women who had survived previous ordeals felt a mixture of fatigue and alertness. The night had been long, with whispers, silent prayers, and the ever-present fear of the unknown. The previous day's humiliations had tested them, but something even harsher awaited. Orders came again, sharp and abrupt. Line up for inspection. There was no preamble, no explanation. The women moved mechanically, each step measured, each glance careful. Even as they complied, a silent understanding passed among them. Survival required endurance, but inner dignity remained untouchable. The soldiers did not speak. Their presence alone conveyed authority, expectation, and the implicit threat of punishment. Every woman felt the weight of it, a physical pressure pressing on her shoulders, a reminder that the next moments could be the most trying yet. The inspection revealed small humiliations, items confiscated, routines enforced, and behavior monitored. Each act was designed to strip away self-respect. Yet within this structure, subtle defiance endured. Women shared brief glances, whispered words, and small gestures of support. These acts became lifelines, reminders that even in captivity, the human spirit could not be broken. Suddenly, the commanding officer stepped forward with an unexpected order. The women were to perform tasks that were physically demanding and psychologically invasive, testing their endurance, obedience, and composure. Hearts raced, breath quickened, and every muscle tensed. The previous ordeals had been severe, but the unknown magnitude of this command made fear almost tangible. As the first group was called, hesitation rippled through the line. Some moved slowly, burdened by exhaustion. Others felt panic rising, but forced their bodies into motion. Every movement was scrutinized, every delay noted. A single misstep could result in punishment. The women, however, drew on internal reserves, holding themselves together with determination. Some focused on mental strategies, counting steps, recalling memories of home, silently reciting prayers. These acts preserved identity and inner strength. Others relied on shared solidarity, finding courage in the presence of fellow prisoners. A hand on a shoulder, a subtle nod, a brief word of reassurance. These gestures reinforced unity and offered a shield against despair. The hour stretched endlessly. Tasks repeated, commands compounded, and the psychological pressure increased. Yet the women endured. Every act of obedience became a testament to their resilience. Compliance did not equal surrender. It was a method of survival. Each woman maintained a quiet inner autonomy, holding fast to memories, hopes, and the belief in eventual freedom. At one point, a particularly harsh command required the women to confront the limits of their physical endurance. The sun blazed overhead, sweat poured, and muscles ached. Despite the pressure, they persisted. Older women offered guidance and support, ensuring the younger ones could complete the tasks without breaking. Whispered encouragements and subtle cues created a network of resilience that could not be observed by the guards. The soldiers' attempts to dehumanize had unintended consequences. The more extreme the commands, the stronger the solidarity became. Shared suffering fostered empathy, strategy, and psychological resistance. The women learned to navigate the complex landscape of obedience, fear, and internal defiance. By midday, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, but a quiet determination persisted. Women who had faltered earlier regained composure, drawing strength from collective experience. The ordeal became a crucible, shaping resilience and reinforcing the understanding that dignity could survive even the harshest conditions. When the final phase of the day's orders arrived, the women faced a moment of intense psychological pressure. Every instinct screamed resistance. Every memory of past humiliation surfaced, yet each moved forward. Compliance had become a ritual of survival, not submission. They learned to separate the actions demanded of them from their inner selves, preserving a core sense of identity. As the day progressed, subtle acts of defiance, eye contact, whispered words, and shared glances continued to fortify the prisoners. These gestures were invisible to the guards, but powerful in sustaining morale. The women realized that endurance was not solely physical. It was mental, emotional, and spiritual. Survival demanded unity, creativity, and unwavering focus. By late afternoon, the extreme pressure began to ease. The commanding officers departed, satisfied with the display of obedience, unaware of the quiet networks of resilience among the prisoners. The women, though physically drained, were stronger in their internal resolve. They had faced unthinkable orders, maintained composure, and discovered depths of courage previously unknown. Nightfall brought temporary relief, yet sleep was uneasy. Dreams were haunted by commands, scrutiny, and fear. Still, even in rest, the women's minds rehearsed strategies for survival, strengthening bonds and reinforcing dignity. Some wrote notes, secretly documenting experiences for themselves, a mental record of endurance and resilience. Others shared quiet conversations, reflecting on the day's events and reaffirming solidarity. Over successive days, the women continued to face similar ordeals. Each repetition of humiliation and compliance reinforced mental strength. They learned patterns, anticipated commands, and developed strategies to maintain dignity while obeying. The POW camp had become a training ground for endurance, psychological fortitude, and collective resilience. By the end of Part 3, the women had endured a sequence of shocking, dehumanizing orders, yet emerged stronger. Every act of compliance was a victory of survival. Every whispered word a declaration of internal freedom. They had transformed fear into strategy, vulnerability into strength, and captivity into an opportunity to assert psychological autonomy. The story concludes not with despair, but with enduring courage. The women's spirits had been tested and fortified. They had learned that even under relentless oppression, dignity, identity, and solidarity could survive. The POW camp, designed to break them, had instead revealed their inner strength and resilience. Even as they awaited the next challenge, a quiet confidence prevailed. They understood that while their bodies could be controlled, their minds and spirits remained theirs alone. The unthinkable orders had been endured, and with each act of survival, they reclaimed a piece of themselves. The final message of Part 3 is one of triumph through endurance. Despite unimaginable circumstances, the women had survived. They had preserved dignity, strengthened solidarity, and demonstrated the unyielding power of human resilience. Their experience remains a testament to courage in the face of dehumanization, an enduring story of survival, hope, and inner strength.